am I going to make the most money?
Victoria is poised for the best growth in Australia.
There's going to be huge growth and huge returns for property owners in Victoria. Land tax was X, it's now gone up to X plus. They're robbing me.
It's actually cheaper still in Victoria.
Welcome back to Brick to the Future. Thanks for tuning in. Just to remind everyone, any questions, comments or questions you want answered, hello@opencorp.com.au. Here with Cam McLellan and Matt Lewison, all founders of OpenCorp. And what we thought we'd talk about, and we talked recently about where we see the market going based on what's happening with interest rates, particularly the drops and the multiple interest rate drops coming up. But one thing that I'm asked again and again is, what's the OpenCorp algorithm telling people to buy? Are we a strong buy? And currently we're Victoria. And every time we say that, the follow-up question is, yeah, but what about land tax? So I think it's a bit of something, let's call it a myth that people put out by Victoria because they're worried about this land tax thing. But in reality, we think it's not that big a deal and we should talk about it.
Firstly, what is the amount extra in land tax you'd pay in Victoria versus what's the growth? That's really what smart investing comes down to, isn't it?
Yeah.
Louis, give us a rundown.
All right. Look, I think just initially the sentiment around land tax in Victoria, whenever there's something changed, everybody who has something that's affected by that, feels like something's been taken off them. So property land tax was X, it's now gone up to X plus.
It was $800, now it's gone to $1,500, whatever it might be.
Yep. They're robbing me, therefore I'm mad.
Yeah.
All right. But when you're buying something and you're buying into that market, then it's obviously a lot easier to comprehend because you're saying, I'm factoring that into my decision to buy. And your decision to buy ultimately should be driven by where am I going to make the most money? And Melbourne's housing market is absolutely primed to go off with interest rates coming down, with a massive undersupply. And obviously the market's been held back by sentiment for the last couple of years. And as that starts to turn, we're going to see huge growth in the Melbourne housing market. So essentially the variable on land tax is 0.3% of the value.
Yeah.
So to put that in perspective, you make $100,000, 0.3% is $300. So if the house value goes up by 100,000, which we think is absolutely well within the realm of possibilities in the next 18, 24 months, $300 of that will go to land tax.
Our audience is very sophisticated property investors, but we better just clarify, it's not on the full asset value, is it?
It's one of those things that a lot of investors make a mistake with. They rush out and they buy an established house. And in Melbourne, it's rampant. The number of investors buying in inner suburbs where they're paying millions of dollars to buy an investment property. And when you're paying millions of dollars for an investment property, we know the yield is terrible, first of all.
Yeah.
And you're getting massive land tax bills. So that absolutely hurts. But when people are smart and they're buying the right thing where the land value is about half of the price of what you're paying, then your land tax bill is a lot less.
I think we should be really clear to people, don't just dive in. There's not a blanket over Melbourne saying, let's just buy Melbourne will win, because there's certainly pockets where absolutely avoiding oversupply, employment generators decreasing, things that are causing properties that won't grow the same. So you've got to be selective. So don't run out and buy a house in Vic because we said Vic's good. There's elements and pockets that are the right ones to look at.
There's this mass hysteria because, the government's put an extra $500 on their land tax bill. That's painful, but it doesn't make it any more expensive than another state when you factor in all costs. I know that in Queensland, your rates are much higher. It's actually cheaper still in Victoria, taking that into account on an affordable end of the market. Victoria is poised for the best growth in Australia at this point in time over the shortest period of time, based on that consumer sentiment really getting stimulated when we get a slight interest rate drop, which could be coming pretty soon.
The hysteria has actually done a favour for all the existing property owners in Victoria.
Sure, yeah.
It was unintentional on the people who are obviously, sprouting the hysteria. But if it's held back some people from investing in Melbourne for the last year, then it's enabled those who got in to get in cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's obviously depressed the market a little bit, potentially. And as that hysteria starts to leave and the sentiment improves, then there's going to be huge growth and huge returns for property owners in Victoria.
So can I change gears a little bit? And look, I'm a pretty competitive sort of guy. It's imminent, or it's happened. Is Melbourne now the biggest capital city in the country? And if it isn't, I think it's happening in the next 6 weeks or something is what I heard. Is that right?
Absolutely. Population growth figures are generally 6 months lagging, but we're on that cusp of taking over Sydney in size, and the number of people moving to Victoria is astronomical.
The point is supply and demand. You've already talked about lack of starts, maybe not in this exact conversation, but in others. Rental vacancy rates, what are they? Where are they headed? Why is that relevant to this overall conversation about land tax?
Yeah, so rental vacancy rates sitting about 1.7% across Melbourne, and they can fluctuate week to week slightly, but the trend has been going down for the last couple of years. Post-COVID, it was pretty much the highest vacancy rate in Australia's capital cities for quite a while, and obviously with this underbuilding and the resurgence in population growth, it's been coming down. Melbourne's such a big city as well. It takes a lot to turn that around. So when you've got a trend of shrinking vacancies, it doesn't correct overnight. It's going to take a couple of years to correct, and a couple of years of extra building, which needs to be well above what we're currently building here. So
It won't impact it. So you'll see an increase in rents, first of all.
rents, yep, 100%. So rent's going to keep going up. So they've been going up between 5 and 10%, in some suburbs more than others, but there's been that strong trend of rental growth. So that's going to be improving for investors, obviously improving the income. And while rents are going up, the more they go up, and we saw this in Perth for about 3 years, as rents just kept going up by 5+% per annum, tenants started to become desperate to get out of that tenant rental market and trying to buy in the housing market, which pushed more first home buyers into the market. That pushed up prices. But as rents go up, and again, this is something we saw in Perth, something we've seen in Brisbane, something we're about to start seeing more of in Melbourne. As rents go up, families, the baby boomers who have got the biggest wealth in the country, the biggest demographic of wealth holders in the country, start to provide their money to their kids because I hate to see the rent going up on you so much. That baby boomer transition, like those gifts, are often can be more than $100,000.
We see dozens of them monthly with parents helping kids out to get into the property market. Yeah. It's a smart move.
So I like to pride myself on my maths, and I'll just check it with you. I don't think I'm wrong. So you said if my property goes up 100,000, my land tax goes up 300. You said rents in Perth grow at 5% during that sort of cycle. So the average rent, and I'll water it down, is probably $500 a month a week in Melbourne. If I got a 2% rental growth, that's more than $10 a week, and is that $500 a year? So more than covered your land tax increase because there's a growing rental market because of supply and demand in that space.
So we've debunked the land tax in Victoria myth, and it's just a media-driven hysteria, which is frustrating for people who've got property, but it's a pathetically small amount compared to what people are going to get in growth over the coming years.
Thanks for joining us, Matt. Thanks, Cam. Thanks for tuning in. I'll say it again, hello@opencorp.com.au. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.